John Underwood from ThreeWill here with another installment of Jive Connects for Microsoft SharePoint. This time we're going to learn about controlling the flow of data between SharePoint and Jive. Now, as you saw in an earlier demonstration, the establishing of a socialization relationship between a SharePoint site and a Jive place is the most common and probably the most powerful way of sharing data across the connector. However, there are often legitimate concerns about this kind of data sharing. After all, if we're too permissive in the way that we do things, we may actually wind up streaming data into Jive that never should have gone there in the first place. So what I'm going to show you in the course of this video are several ways that you can manage and control that flow. The first of those happens at the document level. So let's see a scenario of how we might use this disabling of Jive activity streams for a particular document. Let's suppose that you uploaded a document to a library and that library is participating in a socialization relationship, and you realize that you've streamed this data over to Jive when you didn't really mean to do so. Well, on a document-by-document basis, we actually have an option of blocking that document from the activity stream. You see that on the menu, Disable Jive Activity Streams. Now, notice this is just going to apply to the individual document, not the entire library. So if I choose to disable this particular document from the activity stream, you'll notice that its Jive status icon changes, indicating that it is no longer being socialized. Now if I go over to Jive, we'll see upon refreshing the screen that that content actually disappears from the Acme Global place. So as you can see, we'd use that feature as end users in order to fix our mistakes. If we accidentally publish something, we can at least go in and rectify the problem. Now, a more proactive and more administrative approach would be to establish certain parameters at the site level. Again, you'll recall from an earlier demonstration that we set up socialization for a particular site and potentially its subsites. So by reviewing those settings, we can go in and make sure that we're not oversharing data. Let's see how that looks. In order to access the socialization settings for a particular site, I simply click on the Site Actions menu and then navigate to Site Settings. Obviously, one would need to be logged in with the appropriate privileges in order to be able to access this page. Now, you'll notice the link in the Jive section named Jive Socialization Settings. I'll click on that one. And then several things you'll want to note here. First of all, this lets us confirm that we've socialized this site to the correct place over in Jive. Below that, the Include Subsites. This is important in that if we turn this option on, it has the possibility of greatly increasing the scope of documents that we would be socializing into Jive via the activity stream. And then just below that, the All Document Libraries option. In most cases, what we want to do is turn that option off, and then below in the list box, specify just the libraries that we wish to socialize. There are two reasons that this is a good practice. Number one, there are going to be certain libraries, such as site pages, that are going to contain data that Jive doesn't know how to process. And number two, by turning off the All Document Libraries option and being more specific, we just reduce the likelihood that some piece of data accidentally flows into Jive when we didn't really intend for it to do so. The third approach for controlling the flow of data between the environments happens at the farm level. Whenever you install the connector, there's an option set up in Central Administration that allows you to establish corporate policies on how data will flow from Jive to SharePoint. As you'll see in the demo that follows, this is the way that a farm administrator can establish global control to make sure that we're only sharing the kinds of data from the places that we intend to share from. I've navigated to Central Administration for my SharePoint farm, and now I'm going to go into the Application Management section, and you'll notice the link entitled Corporate Policies for Jive. Now, I don't want to overwhelm you with a lot of different options here, so let me just kind of hit the highlights of different options that can be set by a farm administrator in order to control the flow of data. The first of those has to do with the triggering of events in the activity stream. In simple terms, we can choose to put an activity stream entry in anytime an item is added or an item is updated. In this case, I've chosen to do both. The next thing we can do is make some kind of statement at the SharePoint site level as to whether or not that particular site should be able to participate in activity streams. And notice we have three options here. The first is to allow all SharePoint sites to be streamed. The second says, let me block a particular site or sites, and you'll see that that's the option I've chosen. And then the third approach says to allow only certain sites. Now, the reason for the three options, well, obviously you want to be able to specify the smallest number of sites possible. So as an example, if you had 36 sites and 2 of them needed to be barred from participating in socialization, you'd use the block option and specify those 2 sites. Conversely, if you had many sites and only a few were allowed to participate in socialization, you would choose the allow option instead, and then you would specify that small number of sites. Now, whatever I just did there in terms of blocking or allowing SharePoint sites, I can also do the same thing with particular file extensions and even content types. Now, it may take a little planning to get these right, but all of these are just going down the path of trying to make sure that we don't socialize data into Jive, and we're trying to avoid that either because it's data that Jive wouldn't understand or because it's data that's inappropriate for Jive or perhaps even malicious, such as with a file extension for an executable that might contain some virus. Finally, if you look at the very bottom of this page, there are going to be certain cases where particular users should never participate in socialization. As an example, let's say that we have an executive level assistant that is responsible for dealing with payroll issues. It could be that this individual's daily work is of such a secure nature that we never want their data to flow across an activity stream. So notice that I can actually specify a user account here and in effect say, even if this person puts a document in a library that's properly socialized, that particular document will be blocked because it belongs to this user.